moving the conversation back to national politics, I want to get to our next segment here. Speaking of Kamala Harris, speaking of how she hasn't really put forth a set of policies yet, an agenda, there's one thing she needs to do first before she does that, and that's pick a running mate. Now, I find this to be a very interesting topic because sometimes there's an obvious choice, sometimes, or there's like one or two obvious choices. Right now, I'm looking at the field and going, every single person has about the same case for why they should be the vice presidential pick. But that's my opinion. Do you feel the same way? When we'll go, one by one here. But is there anyone that stands out to you as someone that is head and shoulders above the rest?
For a not a good reason, I guess. Like, this is more for a superficial reason, because as far as policy and things like that, I mean, it's the vice president. So what can they do other than advise her in the direction and be there in case, they don't miss. But I think I always said Gavin Newsom because, and only because, he's charismatic. I think they could have fun with the whole California thing. That would be the one thing that the Republicans would eat up. They would say that it's the big cities crushing the small. That would be one of the things. They would say the coastal elite are trying to take you out. They would say that, but I think he could satisfy a lot of angry leftist white men who can't figure out why they're mad, but they know that they're mad for some reason about something, and it's probably that. I think that it would. I think that he could be seen as progressive enough to stand with her, where we could say this is a truly more left-leaning ticket right here. Like, he's done enough of those things, but there isn't. I mean, you're right. Other than that, and that's kind of for a superficial reason of like just optics. But I mean, that's all part of campaigning, right? Other than that, I can't think of anybody that's like. Honestly, I can't think of anybody else that should run. I can't. I know we wanted Biden to step down, but when you were calling for it, or we were talking about it before, was there anybody that ever popped in your head that you were like, you know what? If he steps down, I want this person to run, and this should be the vice president.
Are you saying as opposed to Kamala running? Like, if it wasn't Kamala running, who else it could be? Or
because that's
assuming Kamala's running, who I want personally as the VP.
Both. Like, okay. if it wasn't Kamala running, who would you want it to be, and who do you want her vice president to be? Because it's probably going to be her.
Yeah, I mean, so when the debate originally happened, I mean, I'm with you. I've been calling for Biden to step down, not seek re-election, for well over a year now. It sucks that he did it when he did it instead of doing it a year ago, so he could actually have a primary. But when the debate happened itself, I was in the camp of, hey, we have time here to run a mini primary and have an election and elect someone. And it's probably going to end up being Kamala, but that's the right thing to do. They drug it out for a little while, and when Biden ended up stepping down, I was at the point of, Kamala is really the only option. Like, we didn't really have time to actually vet another candidate. It was probably going to end up being Kamala anyway, with such short notice and just on pure name recognition and infrastructure. And as I said earlier in the show, she is more progressive than Biden is. And if she's the easy, obvious option and pick, and she's moving in the direction I want to anyway, well, I'm sorry, Bernie's too old. I'm going to go with Kamala. Like, I do think that she was, at the point when it happened, she was the person I was excited about, or most excited about, most wanted to be the nominee. And she ended up being that way. It ended up working out. And hopefully she doesn't mess it up. That being said, the vice presidential pick, it's interesting. To me, there are a couple of main candidates. The top right now, if I'm going to put my money on it, would be Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, mostly because he's the governor of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the most likely state to be the tipping point state. And the only real effect that the VP tends to have is just giving a slight, I think, half a point boost in their home state. That's really the only electoral consequence that has historically come from the vice president. And if you're valuing that above all other things, it might as well be in Pennsylvania. And also the benefit of Shapiro is that he will be replaced by a Democrat in Pennsylvania. Like, you don't have to worry about that as much as some of the other candidates being replaced by Republicans. If he vacates the office, the next governor of Pennsylvania is probably going to be a Democrat. I say that as someone who lives here and has lived here most of his life. However, personally, I like Shapiro being a governor of my state. He's done a really good job. And I do have concerns with him at a federal level, given his staunch Zionism and support for Israel, even more so, significantly more so in many regards than Biden. The biggest criticism of him I have seen so far is that Kamala has a surprising amount of support from Gen Z, from progressives, that no one was really banking on happening. And Shapiro would really put some water on that fire and open her up to attacks from the left on the issue of Gaza. Do you think there's credence to that? Like, do you think if she picked Shapiro, it would hurt her with young people? Or do you think that young people have kind of decided she's the one, for lack of a better term, and her VP pick isn't really going to move the needle so much? I do think there's a vibes to consider, but I don't know how much vibes actually determine the results of presidential elections.
I think Vice President Kamala Harris is the most critiqued vice president I've seen in many election cycles. I think your average Gen Z, even millennial voter, they don't even really know what the vice president does. Like, they don't think about the vice president. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't vote against Mike Pence. I voted against Trump. So I think if they're told to worry about it, then Gen Z will worry about it. But I honestly think it doesn't matter who she says right now. I don't think they're going to care. Like, I think they want her, and it's kind of like, whatever, let's get her in there and we'll figure it out once we're in the clear. Like, we'll one problem at a time. This is on fire. We have to just put the fire out. I'll worry about how to clean it later. So I don't see him. I don't see him hurting that much, because anybody who's that concerned, not that you should not be concerned, but anybody who this is a breaking point for them, or whether or not they're gonna support Kamala, they don't like her track record. So I don't think he could make it worse. I think that there's some people that have just kind of resigned themselves to, okay, I don't like what she did, I don't like how she handled it, or I don't like the things that she said, and I did not like the administration that she was a part of, but this is an opportunity to step forward in a slightly differing direction. I'm going to vote for her anyway. And anybody that's like her position on Gaza, even though she came out in March and she said that there needed to be a ceasefire, it wasn't enough, it was too little too late, that guy's not going to vote for her anyway. I don't think Shapiro pushes that needle in either direction because of how divisive that subject already is. If you're against it, you weren't going to vote for her. So...
No. You have a really good point there. It's like, what is the actual marginal utility if someone isn't going to vote for her because of Shapiro being a Zionist? They probably weren't going to vote for her anyway. Like, they're probably one of the people who were they were resigned to not vote already, and they're just looking for reasons, and they'll make noise, and it could hurt the vibes, but overall, that half a point in Pennsylvania is probably more worth it than what what we're going to have to deal with in our comment section. But
Right, yeah, exactly.
but okay, so if it isn't Shapiro, and again, I think Shapiro, my money's on him. But if it isn't Shapiro, I think, and this is maybe a controversial opinion on, for people in betting markets right now, but I think that the second most likely choice would be good old Mayor Pete. I'm actually quite a big fan of Pete as VP. As a politician and policy-wise himself, he's also a little bit of a mystery box. He has always run fairly moderately, more in the Biden camp of things. But that being said, his greatest strength is communication. It's really the only reason he is where he is he is a expert level, honestly, near Obama level communicator. He doesn't have the inspirational, charismatic abilities of Obama, but his just ability to clearly communicate issues with the American people is probably the best in the Democratic Party right now. And if you look at what does a vice president do on the job, that's mostly their job. Is the president tells them, go talk about this thing so I don't have to. And Pete would be excellent. I think of all of the picks, talk about actually doing the job of a VP, Pete would be the best pick. The downside of that is you basically forfeit any sort of home state, swing state bump, that half-point bump that I discussed earlier. You don't get that with Pete. He's from, I don't know where he actually is from, but he was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. We're not too concerned about Indiana being the tipping point state. So you're kind of forfeiting that. But him wiping the floor with JD Vance during the vice presidential debate would be appointment television, Ryan. And I would be very happy if I were to see it. What do you think about Mayor Pete?
I think Pete could be I think Pete could be a good one. I'd like exactly what you said. I'd like his communication skills. I like the way that he talks. Yeah, it's gonna end up being a lot of that, I think, with these candidates, is that we need them to kind of bolster it, like fill in gaps where she's going to miss. Every time I've heard her speak, I don't love it. She just kind of sounds wishy-washy sometimes. So I think pairing her with somebody who's very good and I guess reassuring, comforting kind of person, I think that's probably a really good idea. Love to see but yeah, also too, the other reason I like him is because he's hard to pin down like her really on much of anything that you could be like with a broad brush. I don't like you for these several reasons. He's hard to do that with because he seems to grow and change from time to time. Like you can't even look at his track record of like how he's felt about issues or how he's spoken about issues before. He just doesn't have a lot to critique. And yeah, maybe he is moldable. Maybe we're able to push him left. Who knows? Or further left.
And again, you don't even need, as the vice president, and knock on wood, we're thinking Kamala probably has the highest likelihood of serving her term of the Biden Trump Kamala triumvirate, just due to her age. But I don't anticipate needing it to get to this point where you're like, oh, we're worried about the VP taking power. It's more so, can they do the job of communicating for the president? Yes, Pete can. It's basically why he's the transportation secretary. He doesn't know crap about transportation. He was given that cabinet position just to be a mouthpiece for Biden. And I think that he would have a similarly useful role, a step up, because I think he's succeeded in that role. Ever since the debate, I feel like he's been on TV more than anyone. Even Kamala, like I've seen him more than anyone since the debate, and I think there's a good reason for that. And I think it does tip the hand that there is more consideration for him as VP than you might expect from a pure electoral perspective. But other than that, we have a couple other options. I just want to go through real quick and get your thoughts just to round out the group here. So We also have Beshear. I don't actually know how to pronounce his name, from Kentucky. His pros is that I think he's the most popular Democratic governor in the country, like in his own state. He doesn't have the national recognition, but he's the most popular Democrat in a highly red state. So obviously he does something good to communicate to more right-leaning conservative people. He could be strong for independence, but he doesn't really. We're not winning Kentucky, so it doesn't really give you a meaningful bump. You also have Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, who would be great. Michigan could also be high likelihood of being the tipping point state, but she has repeatedly said she doesn't want to do it, and there are concerns of a double woman ticket. You can't have two people of the same minority group on the same ticket. That obviously can't happen in America. But I think that's a little overblown. Maybe I'm a little optimistic, but I think people are over worried about that because of the failure of Hillary, which I think was more of a failure of Hillary than it was anything else. Who was Hillary's VP pick? I don't even remember. Oh, it was
I don't remember either.
It was generic white guy. It was like I remember his face. He's such a generic white guy that I forget. Hold on. What was his name? Tim Kaine.
Tim Kaine.
Yes.
I forgot about that.
That's so yeah, that would be the case against Whitmer if she, decides she would actually do it. And then the other guy that has been tossed around, I think, is Cooper, from Roy Cooper from North Carolina. Kind of the same deals. Like North Carolina could be a tipping point state, a little less likely than Michigan and Pennsylvania, but it's in play. And then the biggest knock against him would be that he might be replaced by a Republican, and you're kind of running that risk, as opposed to Whitmer and Shapiro. You're probably not so much. But any thoughts on those? Because that kind of rounds out the options that we have available to us right now. And Mark Kelly being kind of the last one, but I really don't think it's going to be him from Arizona. Both Mark Kelly and Roy Cooper kind of also have the same problem of being older. And it seems that we want to move in a younger direction. So of that grab bag, do you think any of those stand out as, a potential pick above the rest? Any particular thoughts on any of them?
Honestly, no. I think the two that we did speak about, I think those would be kind of like my favorites, or leaning towards. The other ones, like it was Whitmer, right? I don't think she wants to even do it. Like, there doesn't seem to be any. I can't tell, and you tell me what you're seeing, but I haven't seen any enthusiasm on that side for anybody who wants to be with her. It just feels like all of this happened so quickly, and they're kind of just throwing out a bunch of names of people, letting it go off in the news, and then letting those people see that, oh wait, they're thinking about me for vice president or something like that. Like, it just it feels like those last four just real milk toast kind of. But that's what the vice president is. Like that. Like the vice president, again, I still really can't think of like what the vice president does. Like they just speak, they speak on behalf of the president, and they're just the other side when they got to be in two places at once. That's really it. That's really it. So out of those, line them up and print a picture out of each of them and just
throw a dart.
Throw a dart. Whoever it hits, yeah, whatever, man. We'll put you on the bottom of the thing. I wanted to, because this happened. I saw this happen after we had discussed topics for today. But what do you think about Kamala Harris's accidental slogan? Have you heard it?
There have been a couple tossed around. I heard that we will not go back, or we won't go
Yeah.
back. I've heard that tossed around. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, we won't go back. I've seen people call this her accidental slogan or something like that, like
Mhm.
a couple of times. And honestly, I think it is one of those kind of very memorable presidential moments because she really did. It looks like she almost was off prompter and just kind of said it,
Mhm.
and the reaction of the room is electric. It's a really interesting, cool moment to see when the people start chanting this thing back to her that she was like, that wasn't. I didn't mean to do that. Like, and but you kind of see this sort of like look come over her face where she realizes what she said, and she realizes how much that impacted the people that she's talking to. We won't go back. And I love that slogan because it is, or something close to it, whatever they come up with, because it's literally the antithesis of Make America Great Again. We
Yeah.
will not go back. It's the exact opposite sentiment. And I say at this point, hit him. Let's not be, we'll be the change, we'll be hope. No, 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 no. We're not doing any of the stuff that he wants to do. Tell me that. That's what I want in a presidential candidate.
I do. I like that it was organic, or at least it seemed organic. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sure she workshopped that a little bit, but it seems to have been a real, genuine, organic reaction that she was slightly surprised by, and it
Mhm.
does have juice. Like I felt it too. My one thought about it as not being a good thing, and this might be a me thing, but when I was going up through school and learning about American history, I remember learning about there's the Whig Party, right? And
Mhm.
then there was another party which you may not have heard about because it totally failed, called the Anti-Whig Party. And for whatever reason, Ryan, this lesson has always stuck with me that if you
Right.
position your identity as a negative, as against something, you are subconsciously telling people you're inferior to that thing. And I always hesitate with
Mm.
negative slogans. I feel the same way about Antifa. I feel the same way. There's a couple other things, right? They're not coming to mind, but like when you are against something instead of being for something, it tends to not have as impactful an effect on people. However,
True.
because it is the antithesis of Trump's campaign slogan and it just has that juice, I don't mind it at all. No, I think that if she lands on that, I'm good with it. I think that it will be a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's very cool. And I think if her policy comes out soon or whatever her campaign promises, I think what you just touched on is an important point, and especially to other leftists that are trying to talk to people that want want them to vote or want them to hear you out or whatever. You have to give people something to vote for, not
Mm-hmm.
something to vote against. You can't constantly be taking hope away. There's a difference between being like real or a pragmatist and just being negative
Mm-hmm.
towards somebody who's finally having hope. Biden stepping down they've re-energized a lot of the left side of the spectrum because they felt a little hopeful for a
Mm-hmm.
second that, like, oh, I mean, it took them long enough, but like maybe they are kind of paying attention. Okay, now I'm gonna clock back in. Now I'm gonna start paying attention, and I think that that's an important thing to remember as we continue on. Is that we have to give people something instead of continuously telling them what they won't get. And
Yeah.
like, you're not going to get anything. It's like, but I don't want to stay at zero. I want you to give me something in addition to not doing the evil stuff. So both of those things. But yeah, I hope slogans and all kinds of stuff come out soon.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what happens, and I'm also excited to hear what our audience thinks of this because that'll tell us some good things. So if you like this slogan, let us know in a comment right now. Like it, subscribe, do all the clickbaity stuff, and also I want to hear who people want for VP because I really don't know who people want. I know who I think should be VP, but I don't know who people want. So let us know that as well. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this entire show. You made it to the end. Congratulations. Your prize is you get to know where you can find our amazing guest, Ryan, elsewhere on social media. So, Ryan, how about you tell people where they can find you?
Main platform that I use right now is TikTok, but pretty much everywhere you can find me is iDefOverthink. That's at IDEFF Overthink. And you can find me over on TikTok and Instagram. I make videos talking about anti-racism, politics, and intersectionality, how those two things fit together. So check me out over there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Ryan. TJ usually closes this with a joke right about now, but nothing's coming to mind. So I'm just going to say bye, people. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, do all that stuff, and be here next week.
Peace.
All right, cool. And I will end the stream there. Awesome.
Cool.